She served tables in silence, invisible among expensive suits and conversations that did not belong to her. Her hands shook while holding crystal glasses, not from clumsiness, but from the tiredness of being a nobody. That day, a powerful man humiliated her in front of everyone. "You don't understand numbers," he told her with scorn. But she saw what no one else saw, an error of $500,000. And when she spoke, even though her voice trembled, 3 French businessmen listened to her. That night, the invisible waitress received an offer that would change her life forever. Like this if it touched your soul. It is not just a click. It is a silent hug between those of us who have been underestimated. Comment on how you think this story will end. Your heart already knows it, tell us. And if you have not yet subscribed, it costs you nothing, but for us it means the whole world. Thank you for being here. Thank you for feeling with us. The lights of the Apex restaurant fell, like silk on the marbled tables, softening tanned faces and gold watches. Manhattan breathed outside, with its urban humidity and the distant murmur of Fifth Avenue, but inside the air conditioning maintained a perfect, almost clinical temperature. Sarah Miller walked between the tables with a tray in balance, her black uniform impeccable, her hair pulled back in a bun that tugged at her temples after a 9-hour shift. She was 24 years old, and her hands shook slightly when she held crystal glasses. Not from clumsiness, but from accumulated tiredness. Every night after the restaurant, she took the subway to the night university where she was studying business administration. She slept 5 hours. She woke up with an aching body and a mind clear as water. No one at the Apex knew this. To them, she was just a girl serving plates. That night, the room was buzzing with the cosmopolitan murmur of U.S. executives, Nordic tourists, and Latin American businessmen. Sarah recognized the patterns, conversations in English about mergers, fake laughs, calculated silences. She had learned to read the body language of ambition. Then Richard Stone walked in. The room tensed, not because everyone knew him, but because he took up space as if it belonged to him. 45 years old, custom-made navy suit, hair slicked back, and a tight jaw that communicated impatience. He was followed by 3 men in light blazers, French according to their accent, with that tired elegance of someone who has flown too much. They sat at the corner table, the best one. Sarah felt the maitres look directing her there. She took a deep breath, adjusted her expression to a kind neutrality, and approached with the wine list. "Good evening, gentlemen. Welcome to the Apex." Richard did not even look at her. He was already pulling papers out of a black folder, setting up a tablet on the tablecloth, speaking in rapid Spanish mixed with English terms. "Messieurs, comme je vous ai dit, l'investissement initial sera—" One of the Frenchmen raised a hand, interrupting him with cold courtesy. "Spanish is fine, Mr. Stone, we understand it." Richard nodded, but his smile did not reach his eyes. Sarah waited with the wine, invisible. Finally, without looking at her, Richard pointed with his index finger. "The Napa Valley Cabernet. 4 glasses." "Right away, sir." As she moved away, she heard Richard's voice rising, firm, seductive. He was a man used to convincing, to dominating. Spaces with words. Sarah served the wine, returned, and placed the glasses with millimeter care. No one thanked her, but something caught her attention. On the tablet, opened without shame in the middle of the table, a spreadsheet shone. Columns of figures, rows of investment, a title at the top. BCN Real Estate Investment Proposal, Phase 2. The numbers danced under the light. Sarah did not want to look, but her eyes were trained. 2 years working in the accounting archive of an auditing firm had taught her to read balance sheets like poetry, and something was not right. The final sum highlighted in bold, $450,000. But the rows above, Sarah mentally added, while collecting an empty glass from another table, the total should be less, much less. "Do you need anything else?" she asked, approaching with a pitcher of water. Richard looked up for the first time. His eyes were dark, hard like polished stones. "Be careful with that," he said, pointing to the pitcher. His voice had a condescending, almost mocking tone. "This contract is worth more than you earn in a whole year, girl. We don't want it to get wet." The Frenchmen exchanged uncomfortable glances. One of them, the older man, with round glasses and silver hair, frowned slightly, but they said nothing. Sarah felt the heat rising up her neck. She nodded in silence, served the water with steady hands, and backed away. The room continued its murmur, but for her, the world had narrowed to that instant. The public, small but sharp humiliation. She returned to the bar. She breathed. She counted to 10, but the number kept shining in her mind. 4,750,000. It was wrong. She knew it. Sarah cleaned empty tables with automatic gestures, while her brain ran the calculations again and again. From where she was, she could see Richard's table. He spoke with fervor, gestured with his hands, pointed at the tablet. The Frenchman listened with neutral, professional, but attentive expressions. One of them, the youngest, with a trimmed beard and a dark blue tie, took notes in a leather notebook. The oldest, the one with glasses, checked his own tablet, comparing figures. The third, robust, with a steel watch that reflected the light, simply watched Richard with his arms crossed. Sarah knew that dynamic. She had seen hundreds of similar meetings during her 2 years at the accounting firm. The one who talks a lot is usually the one who has the most to lose. Table 7. Sarah, the maître indicated, passing by her. Dessert and check. She moved with efficiency, smiled at the couple of German tourists, brought them the tiramisu and the crème brûlée, but her mind was still trapped in that number, $4,750,000. When she passed near Richard's table again, she caught fragments of the conversation. The estimated return in 18 months. Prime location in the Upper East Side. Permits already managed with the city council. Richard spoke like someone selling certainties. But certainties, Sarah had learned in her night classes, always come from correct numbers. The maître gave her a signal. Sarah approached the table. "Do you wish to order now, gentlemen?" Richard did not look at her. "Bring us the menu and more bread." "Yes, sir." While placing the bread basket, her eyes involuntarily slid towards the tablet. Now the screen showed a more detailed breakdown. 5 lines of investment. Land. Fund $200,000 construction. $2,100,000 permits. And licenses. $380,000 marketing and sales. $250,000 contingencies. $320,000 Sarah mentally added. 1.2 plus 2.1, 3.3, plus 380,000, 3.680, plus 250, 3.930, plus 320 get 4.25 million, not 4.75. There was an error of $500,000. Her heart pounded against her ribs. How was it possible that no one had noticed? Richard was a businessman. The Frenchmen were professional investors. And yet Sarah took a deep breath. She had to say something. It was her duty, wasn't it? If those men signed a contract with such an error, they would lose $500,000. Or worse, Richard was inflating the figure on purpose. She cleared her throat. "Excuse me, Mr. Stone." Richard looked up with irritation. "What?" "It's just that I think there's an error in—" "You think?" Richard's voice cut the air like a knife. "You think there's an error?" The 3 Frenchmen stood still, looking at her. Sarah felt all the eyes in the restaurant converge on her. Her voice came out smaller than she would have liked. "It's just that the numbers, the sum doesn't—" Richard let out a dry, humorless laugh. "Now the waitresses are auditing $1,000,000 contracts?" He addressed the Frenchman jokingly. "Messieurs, would you allow someone without financial education to review your investments?" The oldest Frenchman frowned. "Monsieur." Stone. But Richard was already standing, his voice rising. "Miss, you are here to serve tables, not to give opinions on things you don't understand. If you want to give math lessons, go to the university." "Ah, wait." He smiled cruelly. "You probably didn't even finish high school." Silence fell like molten lead. Sarah felt her cheeks burning. Her hands were shaking. Every cell in her body screamed at her to answer, to defend herself, but her throat was closed. "I'm sorry," she murmured. And she walked away, blinded by humiliation. Behind her, she heard the uncomfortable voice of one of the Frenchmen. That was unnecessary. But Richard was already resuming his speech, his tone returning to professional seduction. Sarah entered the kitchen, where the heat from the stoves hit her like a fist. She leaned against the tiled wall, breathing raggedly. Leo, the chef, looked at her sideways. "Are you okay?" She nodded without words. But she was not okay. She had never felt so small. The rest of the service passed in a blur. Sarah attended tables, smiled mechanically, carried plates and cleared empty glasses. But inside, something had broken. Or perhaps not broken, but awakened. A silent rage, cold as ice. Richard's table was still there, the four men immersed in documents. From time to time the businessman raised his voice, emphatic, and the Frenchman nodded or took notes. Sarah avoided passing nearby. The maître assigned her other areas of the room. But at 11 o'clock at night, when many tables had already emptied, one of the Frenchmen, the oldest, the one with glasses, got up and walked toward the restrooms. As he passed the bar where Sarah was organizing cutlery, he gave her a subtle nod. She ignored him at first. Then she saw him waiting in the hallway leading to the services, half hidden by a column. Sarah hesitated. She looked towards the table. Richard and the other two were still concentrated on the papers. The maître was busy with a couple at the entrance. She approached. The Frenchman looked at her with intelligent, tired grey eyes. He spoke in a low voice, in Spanish with a Parisian accent, but perfect. "Mademoiselle, what you tried to tell us before, was it about the numbers?" Sarah felt her pulse quicken. She nodded. "Yes, sir." "What did you see?" She swallowed. The words came out rushed, whispered. "The final sum is inflated. The 5 lines of investment total $4,250,000, not $475 million. There is a $500,000 difference. I think the spreadsheet has a formula error or—" She trailed off. The Frenchman narrowed his eyes. "Or what?" Sarah took a deep breath. "Or the error is intentional." The silence between them was dense, charged. The man studied her like someone evaluating an unexpected chess piece. "Do you have a background in finance?" "I study business administration at night. I worked for 2 years at an auditing firm in the archive. I know how to read." "Balance sheets." The Frenchman nodded slowly. "Are you sure of what you are saying?" "Absolutely." He extended his hand. "Ethan Moore, senior partner at Moore & Associates, Paris." Sarah shook his hand, surprised. "Sarah Miller. Thank you for your honesty, Miss Miller, and excuse Mr. Stone's behavior. It was deplorable." "Don't worry," she murmured, though the wound was still fresh. Ethan returned to the table. Sarah returned to the bar, her heart beating like a war drum. Had she done the right thing? Or had she just ruined her own job? 5 minutes later, she saw Ethan lean towards his colleagues, whispering. The three surrounded the tablet. One of them took a calculator out of his blazer pocket. There were exchanges of glances, frowns. Then the young man with the beard opened his laptop, typed quickly, compared screens. Richard, oblivious to the change in atmosphere, continued talking, but his voice was beginning to sound hollow, as if he were talking alone. Then Ethan raised a hand, cuttingly. "Monsieur Stone, we need to clarify something." Richard stopped, smiling with forced confidence. "Tell me." "The numbers do not add up." Richard's smile froze. The rest of the restaurant continued its course. Conversations, laughter, the clinking of glasses. But at the corner table, an abyss had opened. Richard blinked, his mask of security slipping barely a millimeter. "Pardon me?" Ethan turned the tablet towards him. His index finger pointed to the final sum. $4,750,000. But the 5 lines of investment that you yourself broke down total $4,250,000. There is a discrepancy of $500,000. The businessman looked at the screen. His eyes moved quickly, nervously. Then he let out a light, carefree laugh. "Ah, it must be a rounding error. Insignificant in the context." $500,000 is not insignificant," interrupted the robust Frenchman, the one with the steel. "Watch." His voice was deep, without nuances. "And it is not rounding, it is basic mathematics." Richard opened his mouth, closed it. Sarah, from the bar, watched with a mixture of fascination and terror. Part of her wanted to move away, become invisible. Another, deeper part wanted to witness it until the end. "Let me review it," Richard said, taking the tablet with hands that were no longer so steady. He touched the screen, zoomed in on the spreadsheet, slid his finger down the columns. The Frenchman waited, impassive. Finally, Richard looked up. He attempted a smile. "You are right. It is a formula error. The total cell was summing the construction line twice. Unforgivable on my part, but easy to correct. I will send you the updated version." "No," Ethan said with frosty firmness. "There will be no updated version." The silence that followed was absolute. Richard paled. "Monsieur, please, it is an honest error, a software issue. These things happen." "What happens?" the young man with the beard interrupted. closing his laptop with a dry click, is that you did not review your own proposal. Or worse, you did review it and decided we wouldn't notice. That is absurd. And furthermore, Ethan continued, his voice calm but lethal, you publicly humiliated the only person at this table who did notice the error. Richard's eyes instinctively shifted towards the bar, towards Sarah. She held his gaze, not with defiance, but with simple dignity. The three Frenchmen stood up simultaneously, like a synchronized mechanism. They collected their tablets, their notebooks, their Mont Blanc pens. The meeting is over, Ethan said. We will not sign anything with you, Mr. Stone, not because of the error, but because of your lack of rigor and respect. Richard also got up, desperate. Wait, please. We can talk. But the Frenchmen were already walking towards the exit. Ethan stopped next to Sarah, who was still motionless behind the bar. Mademoiselle Miller, could you join us outside for a moment? Sarah looked at the maître. He, disconcerted but sensing something important, nodded. She followed the three men toward the exit. Behind them, Richard slumped into his chair, alone, surrounded by papers that suddenly were worth nothing. Outside, the New York night was warm. The scent of jasmine mixed with motorcycle exhaust. Tourists passed by, laughing. The city was alive, oblivious to the silent earthquake that had just occurred inside the apex. Ethan turned to Sarah. The other two Frenchmen flanked their leader, expectant. Miss Miller, Ethan began, do you have a business card? Sarah almost laughed at the absurdity of the question. I'm a waitress, sir. For now, he said, and he pulled a cream-colored card from the inside pocket of his blazer with letters in gold embossing. Moore & Associates is opening an office in Manhattan. We need someone with an eye for detail, with courage to speak, and with the humility to serve. Someone who sees what others do not see. He held out the card. Sarah took it with trembling fingers. It was heavy, elegant, real. Come tomorrow at 11 in the morning to this address, Ethan continued. We will have a formal interview, but I will tell you in advance. You saved 3 experienced businessmen from losing $500,000, and you did it without asking for anything in return. Sarah felt tears pressing against her eyes, but she held them back. I just saw an incorrect number, and you had. To the courage to say it even when you were humiliated for it, added the young Frenchman. That is rare and valuable. Ethan smiled, a genuine, tired but kind smile. Knowledge does not need shouting, Miss Miller. It only needs truth. The 3 men got into a black Mercedes waiting at the curb. Sarah stood, card in hand, as the car disappeared into the night traffic. When she returned to the restaurant, Richard was already gone. His table was empty, except for a $100 bill half hidden, under a glass. The maître approached Sarah. What happened out there? She put the card in the pocket of her apron. I think I just stopped being invisible. Sarah did not sleep that night. She arrived at her apartment after midnight, a tiny studio in the Brooklyn neighborhood that she shared with another student, Maya, who was softly snoring when Sarah entered. The walls were thin. She could hear the neighbor watching television. The mattress creaked, but it was hers, paid for with her effort. She sat in the only chair in front of the folding desk, under the yellowish light of an IKEA lamp. She pulled the card out of her pocket. Ethan Moore, Senior Partner. Moore & Associates. Manhattan Park Avenue. 47 phone, email, website. All impeccable. Was it real, or a cruel joke from the universe? Sarah turned on her old laptop, the one an uncle had given her 3 years ago. She searched on Google. Moore & Associates. The website loaded slowly. Financial consulting firm with headquarters in Paris, London, Geneva, and indeed Manhattan for 6 months. International clients, investment projects in the real estate, technology, energy sectors. Legitimate, completely legitimate. She looked at the time. 1:47 a.m. In 9 hours she would have to be there. She opened her closet. 2 pairs of jeans, t-shirts, the restaurant uniform, a white blouse she used for exams. Nothing appropriate for an interview on Park Avenue. Maya stirred in bed. Sarah, are you okay? Yes, sleep. But Maya sat, up sleepy. It's almost 2. What are you doing? Sarah turned around and Maya must have seen something in her face because she was suddenly wide awake. What happened? Sarah told her everything. The words poured out. Richard, the Frenchman, the error, the humiliation, the card. When she finished, Maya was looking at her with wide eyes. My God, Sarah, it's incredible. Or it's a trap. A trap. Why? Sarah shrugged. I don't know, it sounds too good. Maya got up, went to her own closet, and took out a grey blazer. Wear this tomorrow with your dark jeans and the white blouse. It will be big on you, but it will work. Maya, I can't. Yes, you can. And you will. Maya squeezed her shoulders. Listen to me. You are the smartest person I know. You wake up at 6, work until 11, study until 3 in the morning. You deserve this, and much more. Sarah felt the tears finally escape. I'm scared. I would be scared too. But fear means it matters. The two friends hugged in that tiny apartment, while New York slept outside. At 7 in the morning, Sarah was already awake. She showered, dressed carefully, combed her hair into a simple ponytail. Maya's blazer was big on her shoulders, but she looked professional, almost like someone who belonged in that world. At 10:15, she took the subway. The cars were full of people in a hurry. Office workers, students, tourists with backpacks. Sarah clutched the card in her blazer pocket like a talisman. When she got out on Park Avenue, the October light was bright, golden. The elegant buildings rose like giants. Tourists photographed the Empire State Building. Traffic flowed in waves. Sarah walked to number 47, a light stone building with wrought iron balconies, a glass door with bronze frames. She took a deep breath. She entered. The lobby was marble, with an old metal cage elevator. A uniformed doorman asked her where she was going. Moore & Associates, 4th floor. He nodded, pressed the elevator button. The doors opened with a mechanical sigh. Sarah went up. Her reflection in the elevator mirrors looked back at her. A young girl, scared but with steady eyes. The doors opened to a bright reception area. Light wood floors, white walls, a minimalist desk where a woman in her 30s, impeccable, greeted her with a smile. Miss Miller? Yes. Mr. Moore is waiting for you. Please follow me. The meeting room had large windows overlooking Park Avenue. The light entered, generously, illuminating a dark wood table surrounded by ergonomic chairs. On the walls, framed diplomas, photographs of projects, office towers, residential complexes, solar plants. Ethan Moore was standing by the window, talking on the phone in French. Seeing Sarah, he motioned for her to enter, ended the call and approached with a smile. Miss Miller, punctual, excellent. Good morning, Mr. Moore. He pointed to a chair. Please sit down. Coffee, tea, water. Water, thank you. The receptionist brought a glass bottle with slices of lemon. Sarah drank a sip, trying to calm the inner trembling. Ethan sat across from her, crossing his hands on the table. Last night, I did not have the opportunity to thank you properly. You saved us from a costly mistake. And more importantly, you showed us that Richard Stone is not the partner we are looking for. Sarah nodded in silence. Let me ask you a direct question, Ethan continued. Why do you study business administration at night? While working as a waitress? Sarah chose honesty. Because I don't have money to study during the day. My family is humble. My father is a bricklayer. My mother cleans houses. I have 2 younger siblings. I need to work to pay for college and help them. Ethan listened with real attention, not the polite attention of someone waiting their turn to speak. And after graduation? I want to work in finance, investment analysis, auditing, consulting. I want to understand how money moves, how projects are built, and I want to do it well, with ethics. Why with ethics? Sarah thought of Richard, his cruel smile, the $500,000 hidden in a formula. Because numbers do not lie. People do, and someone has to defend them. Ethan smiled, a small but genuine smile. You are right, numbers are honest, we are not always. He leaned back in his chair, studying her. I will be frank with you, Miss Miller. We need someone for our junior analysis department. The job involves reviewing investment proposals, verifying data, building financial models. It is an entry-level position, but with real growth. The salary is $2,000 a month, plus benefits. Sarah felt the air leave her lungs. $2,000. It was almost triple what she earned at the restaurant. The question is, Ethan continued, can you start next Monday? She blinked. Are you offering me the job? Yes. Without more interviews? Without tests? Ethan leaned forward. Miss Miller, last night you detected a $500,000 error in seconds while serving drinks, while being humiliated, and yet you had the courage to speak. That is the test I need." Sarah felt her hands tremble. She wanted to say yes immediately, but a part of her, the part that had learned not to trust miracles, stopped her. "What about my classes? I study at night. I cannot drop out of my degree." "You don't have to. The schedule is 9 to 6. Your nights are free. What if I make a mistake? What if I'm not good enough?" Ethan looked at her with something akin to tenderness. "Then you will learn like everyone, but I don't think that will happen." Sarah took a deep breath. She thought of her father, his hands calloused from carrying bricks. Her mother, who smelled of detergent every afternoon. Her siblings, who deserved not to repeat the same life. "I accept." Ethan extended his hand. She shook it, and in that handshake, she felt that something was changing forever. "Welcome to Moore and Associates." On Monday morning, Sarah walked into the office with a knot in her stomach. She wore the same borrowed blazer from Maya, the same jeans, but now she also carried a backpack with her laptop, 2 new notebooks, and a fierce determination. The receptionist, whose name was Clara, greeted her warmly. "Your desk is in the analysis room, 3rd aisle to the left." The room was large, bright, with 6 desks separated by low dividers. 3 were occupied: a man in his 40s with thick glasses, a young woman with short curly hair, and a boy of Asian appearance wearing headphones. All 3 looked up when Sarah entered. "You must be the new one," said the woman, standing up. She had a Boston accent, lively eyes. "I'm Natalie. Welcome." The man with glasses approached. "Jacob, senior analyst. If you need anything, ask." The boy with headphones waved. "Kenji, systems and models." Sarah introduced herself, aware that they probably knew where she came from, but none looked at her with condescension, only with professional curiosity. Ethan appeared at the door. "Sarah, when you settle in, come to my office. We have your first project." She left her backpack, turned on the computer they had assigned her, new, fast, with 2 screens, and followed Ethan. In his office, he handed her a folder. "A Texas company wants to invest in solar energy in Arizona. I need you to review the numbers. Installation costs, projected return, risk analysis. You have 3 days." Sarah opened the folder. Figures, graphs, projections. Her heart raced, but this time with excitement. "I'll do it. I know you will." The next 3 days were a whirlwind. Sarah immersed herself in the spreadsheets like someone diving in deep water. Natalie taught her the programs they used. Jacob explained risk analysis methodologies. Kenji showed her how to build projection models. She worked from 9 to 6, then took the subway to the university, studied until midnight, slept 5 hours, and started again. She was exhausted, but for the first time in her life she was exhausted doing what she loved. On Thursday afternoon, she presented her analysis to Ethan. "The investment is viable," Sarah concluded, pointing to her graphs, "but there is a climatological risk that they did not consider. Arizona has cyclical droughts every 7 years. If the next one occurs in the first 3 years of the project, the return is delayed 24 months. I recommend an additional 15%. Contingency fund." Ethan reviewed the numbers in silence. Then he looked up. "No one had considered that. It's because they analyzed data for only 5 years. I reviewed 15. He nodded slowly. "Good job. Very good job." When Sarah left the office, Natalie was waiting for her with a smile. "How did it go?" "Good, I think. Ethan never says good job, unless he really means it. You just impressed him." Sarah felt a warmth expand in her chest. That night, in her corporate finance class, the professor talked about climatological risk analysis in investment projects. Sarah was taking notes when she suddenly realized she was living in practice what she was studying in theory. The worlds were uniting. 2 weeks later, Sarah was walking along Madison Avenue during her lunch break when she saw him, Richard Stone. He was sitting on the terrace of a cafe, alone, with an espresso and a phone glued to his ear. His suit was still impeccable, but something in his posture had changed. Shoulders slumped, jaw less tight. Sarah thought about crossing the street, about avoiding him, but something, curiosity, pending justice, stopped her. Richard finished the call, left the phone on the table, and rubbed his eyes tiredly. Then he saw her. Their eyes met. For a second, Sarah thought he would ignore her. But Richard made a gesture, inviting her to approach. She hesitated. Then she walked to his table. "Miss Miller," he said. His voice lacked the arrogance of before. "May I buy you a coffee? I have little time." "Just a moment." Sarah sat down, cautious. Richard ordered another espresso for her. The silence between them was dense. "I asked about you," Richard finally said. "I know you now work at Moore and Associates." Sarah did not answer. He sighed. "I came to apologize." That did surprise her. "That night at the Apex, I was an idiot. An arrogant, stupid idiot. You were right. There was an error. An error that cost me the biggest contract of my career." He drank his espresso in one gulp. The Frenchman spread the word. "No one wants to work with me now. They say I'm careless, that I treat people badly. And they're right." Sarah listened, not knowing what to feel. Satisfaction, pity. "I didn't come to ask for your forgiveness," Richard continued. "I just came to tell you that you taught me a lesson that no business school taught me. Knowledge is not only in titles, it is in observation, in humility, in seeing what others do not see." He looked up. His eyes were tired, but there was something genuine in them. "You will be someone great in this world, Miss Miller, and when you are, I hope you remember that success without respect is not success. It is just noise." He left a bill on the table, stood up, and extended his hand. Sarah shook it. "Good luck," Richard said, and he walked away along the avenue, a diminished man but perhaps, for the first time, honest. Sarah remained seated, with the steaming espresso in front of her. She did not feel triumph. She felt something more complex. The understanding that everyone carries shadows, and that true victory is not sinking others, but rising without stepping on anyone. She drank the coffee. She paid her own check, and she returned to the office. 3 months later, in January, Ethan called a general meeting. The entire team gathered in the conference room. There was coffee, croissants, an expectation in the air. "We have a new project," Ethan announced, "a $12 million investment, in a resort in Florida. The client is a German consortium. It is the biggest project we have handled in Manhattan." Glances were exchanged. Jacob nodded, serious. Natalie took notes. "And I want Sarah to lead the financial analysis." The silence was absolute. Sarah felt all eyes fixed on her. "Me?" Her voice came out smaller than she would have liked. "You, with Jacob supervising, of course, but I want your eye on this, your ability to see what others do not see." Jacob did not seem offended. "In fact," he smiled, "it will be an honor to work with you, Sarah." She swallowed. 12 million. A German consortium. It was huge. It was terrifying. "I trust you," Ethan said. "Now trust yourself." The next 2 months were the most intense of Sarah's life. She reviewed every figure, every projection, every contract. She traveled to Florida with Jacob and Natalie to inspect the land. She met the German consortium, serious, meticulous men who asked sharp questions. One night, working late at the office, Natalie sat next to her. "Do you know what I like about you, Sarah?" "What?" "That you don't pretend to know. You ask, you doubt, you verify. The best analysts are not the ones who have all the answers. They are the ones who ask the best questions." Sarah smiled, exhausted but grateful. "Thanks, Natalie. Do you want me to tell you a secret?" "Sure. Ethan is considering making you a junior partner in 2 years. Don't tell anyone, but I heard him talking with the Paris partners." Sarah felt sudden tears. "That can't be." "It can be, because you deserve it." Finally, in March, they presented the complete analysis to the German consortium. Sarah spoke in English. She had taken intensive classes in recent months, explaining projections, risks, opportunities. The Germans listened in silence. They asked questions. Sarah answered with data, with humility, with calm confidence. In the end, the consortium leader, a 60-year-old man with white hair, nodded. "We will sign. Your analysis is the most complete we have seen." Ethan shook hands. Jacob congratulated Sarah with a hug. Natalie winked at her. That night, the team celebrated in a restaurant in Greenwich Village. Wine, laughter, stories. Sarah thought of the Apex, the black uniform, Richard telling her she didn't understand numbers. Now she led analyses of $12 million. Life, she discovered, could change if one dared to see the invisible. April brought flowers to New York, and also a call Sarah did not expect. It was her mother. "Daughter, your father fell off the scaffolding. He's in the hospital." The world stopped. "What? How is he?" "He has a broken leg. He needs surgery. But, daughter, we don't have money for the private one. Social Security says the operation is in 2 months, and he can't wait that long. The pain." Sarah closed her eyes. Her father, that man with calloused hands who never complained. "Mum, I'll take care of it." "But daughter, I have money saved, and I have a good job. Now I'll take care of it." She hung up and spoke with Ethan. She needed 3 days off. "Go," he said without hesitation. "Family first, always." Sarah traveled to her small town in Iowa, a small village where everyone knew each other, where the houses were low and the streets were dirt. She arrived at the provincial hospital, found her father in a narrow bed, pale with pain, but smiling when he saw her. "My girl, you didn't have to come." "Of course I did, Dad." She paid for the private operation. $13,000 that made a dent in her savings, but that she did not hesitate for a second to spend. She watched her father go into surgery, waited 4 hours, saw him come out asleep but stable. Her mother cried with relief. "I don't know how to thank you, daughter." "You don't have to thank me for anything, Mom. It's what we do." That night, sitting in her childhood kitchen, whitewashed walls, wood stove, the smell of thyme, Sarah thought about the journey. From that kitchen to Park Avenue, from serving tables to leading million-dollar analyses, but the heart was still the same, the roots were still here. Her younger brother, Paul, 16 years old, sat beside her. "Sarah, is it true that you are important now?" She smiled. "I'm not important, Paul. I just work hard. The town talks about you. They say you are an executive in New York. I'm an analyst, and I'm still studying. Do you think I could do something like that?" Sarah looked at him. She saw in him the same restlessness she had felt at that age. "You could do whatever you want, Paul. But you have to study, work hard, don't give your time away. Would you help me?" "Always." 2 days later, she returned to New York. Her father was recovering well, her family relieved, and Sarah carried with her a reminder. Success was not just numbers. It was being able to help those you love. In June, Moore and Associates organized an annual dinner with all the European partners, an event at a 5-star hotel, with catering, string quartet music, evening dresses and dark suits. Sarah bought her first elegant dress, black, simple, reaching her knees, low heels, discreet makeup. Maya helped her with her hair, pulling it back in an elegant bun. "You look beautiful," Maya said, emotional. "I'm terrified." "It's the same thing." She arrived at the hotel, went up to the event hall. Chandelier light, round tables with flower centerpieces, people speaking French, English, Spanish. Sarah recognized Ethan, talking with 2 older men, probably the Paris partners. Natalie approached, radiant in a blue dress. "You look gorgeous. Come, sit with us." During dinner, there were speeches. The senior partner from Paris spoke about the successful year, completed projects, the firm's growth. Sarah barely touched her food, nervous. Then Ethan stood up. "Before finishing, I want to recognize someone special, a young woman who came to us 6 months ago and who since then has demonstrated not only technical ability, but integrity and vision." Sarah felt her heart accelerate. Sarah Miller led the analysis of the Florida project, detected risks that others did not see, and helped close one of our most important contracts. And she did it, maintaining humility, teamwork, and excellence. Applause filled the room. Sarah felt her cheeks burn. For this reason, I am pleased to announce that Sarah is promoted to senior analyst with a salary increase and participation in future strategic projects. The room erupted in applause. Natalie hugged her. Jacob winked at her from his table. Kenji raised his glass. Sarah stood up, trembling, and walked to the podium where Ethan was waiting for her with a commemorative plaque. "Thank you," she murmured, accepting the plaque. "No," Ethan replied in a low voice, "just for her. Thank you for reminding us that talent does not have a uniform." That night, when Sarah returned to her apartment, she placed the plaque on her desk. Maya was sleeping, but Sarah stayed awake, looking at that piece of glass with her name engraved. Sarah Miller, Senior Analyst, Moore and Associates. She thought of the Apex restaurant, of Richard, of the $500,000 no one else saw. She thought of her father, recovering in the town, her mother proud, Paul studying harder thanks to her example, and she thought of herself, 6 months ago, invisible among tables. Now she was visible, and she had achieved it without losing her essence. September arrived with gentle rains and a new project. A French pharmaceutical company wanted to invest in biotechnology in the US. Sarah would lead the analysis with a team of 4 people. One afternoon, reviewing documents in a cafe near the office, she heard a familiar voice. "Sarah." She looked up. Leo, the chef from the Apex. "Leo, what are you doing here?" He smiled, his apron replaced by jeans and a t-shirt. "I have the day off. I saw you through the window and couldn't believe it. You look different." Sarah laughed. "Things have happened." They sat together. Leo ordered coffee. Sarah told him everything. "My God," Leo said at the end, "you went from serving us to being an executive. It's incredible. I'm not an executive. I just work hard. You are too modest." Leo looked at her with genuine admiration. "You know, that night when that guy humiliated you, everyone in the kitchen was furious. We wanted to tell him something, but you had already left. It doesn't matter. It worked out. Do you know what happened to him? With Richard?" Sarah shook her head. "He closed his company, bankruptcy. It seems he had more errors than the one that night, and his reputation was ruined." Sarah felt a pang of something. Not joy, but a quiet sadness. "I hope he's okay." Leo looked at her surprised. "Seriously? After how he treated you? We all make mistakes. I hope he learned." Leo shook his head with a smile. "You are a better person than me." They talked about other topics. The restaurant, the new chef, old colleagues. When they said goodbye, Leo told her, "If you ever need a good meal, come to the Apex. It's on the house." "Maybe I will." But she knew she wouldn't go back. Not because she held a grudge, but because that chapter was closed. There were new places to go, new tables to sit at, but this time as a guest, not as the server. In November, Ethan called her into his office. "Sarah, I need to talk to you about something important." She sat down, intrigued. "The Paris partners were impressed with your work. They want to offer you a position at the headquarters. Strategic analyst, it's a big jump. Salary of €60,000 a year. Housing included for the first 6 months. Sarah felt the air escape her lungs. "Paris? Paris? It's an incredible opportunity, Sarah. You would work with the best on international projects. You would grow faster than you could here." She looked out the window. New York shone under the autumn sun. When do they need an answer? 2 weeks. That night, Sarah did not go to the university. She walked through Brooklyn, through Greenwich Village, through the financial district. New York was her city now. Here she had learned to fight. Here she had found her voice. But Paris was the world. She called her mother. "Mom, they offered me a job in Paris." Silence on the other side. "And what do you want to do, daughter?" "I don't know. I'm afraid to leave, but I'm also afraid to stay and ask myself, what if I had gone?" Her mother sighed. That simple wisdom of someone who has lived a lot. "Fear will always be there, Sarah, but regret weighs more. If you think it's your path, go. We will always be here." Sarah cried silently, with the phone against her ear. "I love you, Mom, and I love you, my girl. Now fly." 2 weeks later, Sarah walked into Ethan's office. "I accept. I'm going to Paris." He smiled. "I knew it. You're going to do great things, Sarah. Thank you for everything. For seeing me when I was invisible. You were never invisible. You were just in the wrong place. Now you are where you belong." December arrived with a dry cold in New York, that urban cold that doesn't pierce the bones, but sharpens the senses. Sarah packed her life into 2 large suitcases, plus a backpack she had carried since her university days. Every object she stored was a decision. What part of who she had been was she taking to Paris? What was she leaving behind? Maya was sitting on the apartment floor, surrounded by clothes, books, and memories, her eyes red. She folded Sarah's t-shirts with unnecessary meticulousness, as if she could stop time that way. "I can't believe you're leaving," she said with a shaky voice. "This room is going to be so empty." Sarah stopped folding a sweater and sat next to her on the floor. "You'll come visit me, Maya. I promise. And I'll come back whenever I can. Paris is just a short flight away. It won't be the same." "No," Sarah admitted, taking her friend's hand. "It won't be the same, it will be different. But we will still be us, the same ones who shared this tiny apartment, who studied until dawn, who supported each other when no one else did." Maya hugged her tightly, and both cried a little, that clean cry of someone who knows that goodbyes are not endings, only pauses. That night Sarah barely slept. She stayed looking at the ceiling, listening to the familiar sounds of the building, the neighbor coughing, the pipes complaining, the distant murmur of the city that never completely sleeps. New York had been her school, her battlefield, her place of transformation. The next day, before finalizing the preparations, Sarah did something she had been postponing all week. She dressed carefully. A grey dress, elegant but not ostentatious, the wool coat she had bought with her first salary, and walked to the Apex restaurant. It was mid-afternoon, that quiet time between lunch and dinner when restaurants breathe. The lights were on at half intensity. Only 3 tables were occupied. An elderly couple, 2 businessmen with tablets, a lone tourist with a NYC guide. The maître, the same as always, grey hair combed back, tie perfectly knotted, looked up when she entered. His eyes opened with surprise, then with something akin to respect. Miss Miller. Hello, Arthur. Sarah had learned his name at some point, although she had never used it. I didn't expect... what a surprise. Table for 1, please. He led her without hesitation to the corner table. The same table. Sarah had not specifically asked for that place, but Arthur seemed to understand that there was a reason to be there. She sat down slowly, running her fingers over the white linen tablecloth. From that chair, she could see the entire room, the marble bar, the perfectly arranged tables, the kitchen in the back with its swinging door. She could see herself, 6 months ago, moving between the tables with a tray, invisible. Arthur brought her the wine. List. May I recommend something special? We have an excellent California Zinfandel. That sounds perfect. When he moved away, Sarah looked around with new eyes. The restaurant hadn't changed, but she had. The light still fell like golden silk on the tables. The murmur of conversations was still cosmopolitan, mixing languages and cultures. But now she was not part of the scenery. She was part of the audience. Another diner, a professional who could afford a glass of good wine on her own time. Arthur returned with the glass, placed it with the same care Sarah remembered using 1,000 times. Leo told me what happened, he said in a low voice, about that night with Mr. Stone, and everything that came after. Congratulations on your success, Miss Miller. We are all very proud. Sarah felt a warmth in her chest. Thank you, Arthur. That means a lot. That night, everyone at the restaurant knew you were special. The way you handled the situation with such dignity, it is not common. I just saw a wrong number, Sarah said with a small smile. Arthur shook his head. No, you saw the truth when no one else saw it, and you had the courage to say it, even when they humiliated you for it. That is much more valuable than any degree or uniform. He paused, looking at her with a kind of paternal admiration. Do you know what is most curious? After you left, I started paying more attention to our staff, to their stories, to their dreams. We have a girl in the kitchen who studies design, a waiter who writes poetry. Complete people, not just roles. You taught me to see that. Sarah felt her eyes well up. Thank you for telling me. Arthur withdrew with a respectful bow. Sarah drank her wine slowly, savoring not just the liquid, dense with notes of black cherry and spice, but the complete moment, the poetic symmetry of being there at that table as an equal. She thought of Richard Stone. According to Leo, he had closed his company, gone bankrupt. Part of her wondered if he was okay, if he had learned anything from all that. She hoped so. She felt no triumph at his downfall, only a quiet sadness for the talent wasted on arrogance. She looked towards the window. Outside, New York was preparing for Christmas. The lights were beginning to turn on Park Avenue. The stores shone with decorations. Families walked with shopping bags. The city lived, pulsed, continued. When she finished her wine, Sarah left $40 on the table. It was more than the cost of the glass, much more. But she remembered what it meant to receive generous tips, how a small gesture could transform an entire shift, how it could make someone invisible feel seen. As she left, Arthur escorted her to the door. Will we see you again, Miss Miller? I'm leaving for Paris tomorrow, but I will return. New York will always be my home. We wish you all the best success in the world. And remember, here you will always have a table. Sarah walked along Park Avenue one last time. It was almost dark. The Christmas lights hung between the elegant buildings like terrestrial constellations. The cold gently bit her cheeks. New York was dressing up for a celebration while she prepared to leave. She passed in front of Rockefeller Center with its famous statue illuminated in blues and greens. Tourists stopped to photograph it, marveling. Sarah also stopped, but not to photograph, to memorize every detail, every feeling. She kept walking to the Moore and Associates office. The lights were off, it was Saturday, but she stood in front of the building looking up at the 4th floor. There, in that analysis room, she had found her place. There she had stopped being invisible. She thought of Ethan, his look when he offered her the job, of Natalie, patiently teaching her the programs, of Jacob, supervising without ever belittling, of Kenji, sharing Excel tricks like someone sharing sacred secrets. She thought of her father, recovering in the town, his leg healing thanks to an operation she could pay for. Her mother proud, telling her to fly. Paul studying harder because he now had an example to follow. And she thought of herself, of the 24-year-old girl who carried trays and mentally summed numbers, of the night student who slept 5 hours and dreamed of more, of the woman she was now, with an almost complete degree, a job in Paris, and a future that opened like an unwritten book. She returned to the apartment when night had fully fallen. Maya had prepared a simple dinner, pasta with tomato, salad, bread. They ate in comfortable silence, the silence of those who do not need to fill every moment with words. "Are you scared?" Maya finally asked. Sarah thought about it honestly. "Yes, but I'm also excited. I think fear and excitement are the same, just viewed from different angles. You are the bravest person I know." "I'm not brave. I just learned that staying still out of fear hurts more than moving with fear." That night they slept, together in Sarah's bed like two sisters, embracing against the cold and the future. The next day, Penn Station was bustling with activity. Families dragging suitcases, executives with briefcases, tourists consulting maps. The departures board blinked with destinations. Philadelphia, Boston, Lyon, Paris. Maya, Natalie, Jacob, and Kenji were on the platform. They had all come, despite the Sunday morning cold, to say goodbye to her. Natalie was carrying a package wrapped in silver paper. "It's a diary, for you to write your Parisian adventures." Jacob handed her a book. International Finance, Theory and Practice. "Light reading for the train," he joked. Kenji gave her a USB drive. "Excel models I developed. The best tricks. Don't give them to the competition." Sarah hugged them all one by one, feeling the weight of gratitude in her chest. Maya was the last. They hugged for a long time, without words. When they separated, both had tears. "Go and become a legend," Maya whispered. "I'm already a legend. I'm your best friend." The final call for boarding echoed over the loudspeakers. Sarah took her suitcases, showed her ticket, and walked towards the train. At the door of the carriage, she turned one last time, waving her hand. They waved her off with smiles, hands held high with pride. Sarah found her seat, stored her suitcase in the overhead compartment, and sat next to the window. The train was modern, comfortable, silent. An older couple sat across from her. A businessman occupied the aisle seat, already opening his laptop. When the train started to move, Sarah looked back. She saw the station moving away, then the buildings of New York, then the outer boroughs. The city that had given her so much, pain, learning, transformation, was sliding into the past. She took out her phone. She opened the photos. She scrolled through images from the last 6 months. Her and Maya in the apartment, the Moore and Associates team at the celebration dinner, her father smiling in the far hospital bed, the senior analyst plaque. She paused on a photo she didn't remember having. It was of the Apex restaurant, taken by Leo on a random night months ago. In it, Sarah appeared in profile, concentrated, holding a tray, serious, invisible, full of secret dreams. She smiled, looking at that girl. She wanted to tell her, "Hold on, everything is going to change. Your life is not this tray, it is much more." She put the phone away. The New York landscape turned into French countryside. More. Orderly fields, grey stone villages, wider skies. The train cut through the European afternoon at 200 miles per hour, taking her towards the future. Sarah closed her eyes for a moment. She took a deep breath. She felt the vibration of the train, the heat of the sun coming through the window. The light weight of freedom. She thought of that night at the Apex, of Richard telling her she didn't understand, of the $500,000 no one else saw, of Ethan asking her if she was sure, of her own voice, firm despite the fear. Absolutely. She thought of all the times she had been invisible, and all the times she chose to speak anyway. She thought of the phrase Ethan had said, the one that had become her mantra: knowledge does not need shouting, it only needs truth. And she thought of her mother, with her simple and deep wisdom: regret weighs more than fear. New York disappeared completely in the distance. France stretched ahead, with all its promises, challenges, infinite opportunities. Sarah Miller, the girl who was once invisible among tables, who was humiliated for seeing what others did not see, who dared to speak when everyone expected silence, was now traveling towards the center of the financial world, not because she had stopped being who she was, not because she had become someone different, but because she was finally in the place where her truth could shine without excuses, where her knowledge had room to grow, where her voice mattered. And as the train crossed golden fields under the winter sun of December, as the mountains were drawn on the horizon and Paris approached kilometer by kilometer, Sarah knew with crystalline certainty: knowledge does not need fancy uniforms or impressive titles. It does not need a loud voice or pounding on the table. It only needs eyes that see the truth where others see numbers, a heart that feels when others only calculate, and the courage to speak when silence would be more comfortable. That is the only formula that never fails, the only investment that always yields a return, the only sum that is never wrong. She opened her eyes. France shone under the sun. Paris was waiting, and Sarah Miller was ready.